So one of the qualities of Tunga Vidya is that she's expert in the scripture. So Prabodhananda Saraswati, who was a contemporary of Mahaprabhu, he lived in Vrindavan and he compiled this book, Glorifying Vrindavan Dham, and it's really unparalleled how he speaks. It's really wonderful. So in this morning's verse, he was saying that I would rather be an insect in Vrindavan, I'd rather take my next birth as an insect in Vrindavan than as a demigod outside of Vrindavan. And I would rather live in Vrindavan as an impious, materialistic person than a devotee who's aspiring for the happiness of serving Krishna's lotus feet outside of Vrindavan. So this is quite an amazing verse. So it gave me a little inspiration that perhaps there's some hope for a materialistic rogue to stay here, take shelter. So we're reading today from Bhagavad Gita as it is. What a surprise. It's like every day in class we say, reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, as if there might be some confusion, right? Okay. So this is a great verse, one of the big ones. 221. 221. Yeah, these are all the big primary ones in the second chapter. So we'll chant Veda Vinashinam Nityam Ya Enam Ajam Avyayam Katam Sapurusha Partha Kam Gata Yati Hantikam Veda Vinashinam Nityam Ya Enam Ajam Avyayam Katam Sapurusha Partha Kam Gata Yati Hantakam. It's beautiful Sanskrit meter. The way the shloka flows is beautiful. The rhyme of the Sanskrit is so nice. So would someone like to chant? Have a book? You want to try? Veda Vinashinam Nityam Ya Enam Ajam Avyayam Katam Sapurusha Partha Ham Gata Yati Hantikam. Veda Vinashinam Nityam Ya Enam Ajam Avyayam Katam Sapurusha Partha Katam Sahantuvantikam. Veda Vinashinam Nityam Ya Enam Ajam Avyayam Katam Sapurusha Partha Kam Gata Yati Hantikam. Veda Vinashinam Nityam Ya Enam Ajam Avyayam Partha Kam Gata Yati Hantikam. Veda Vinashinam Nityam Ya Enam Avyayam Kam Gata Yati Hantikam. So there's a literary ornament called alliteration. And alliteration is where a similar sound is used throughout a verse or rhyming couplet or whatever the poetic meter is. And it creates It beautifies the verse. And so here we have, you see the is the alliteration throughout the verse. There's a couple of others. There's the M, there's the K sound is also repeated, but the is the one consistently, right? Veda vinashinam nityam, ye enam ajam avyayam, right? Katam sa purusha parta, and you're wondering, any more going to slip in? Kam gatayati hanti kam. So if you think about it, there's, God is speaking this. God has the supreme brain. He's the supreme intelligence, and Sanskrit comes from him. So we can expect to find beautiful poetic meter and ornament within the words of the Lord. It's interesting. Sometimes we gloss over the fact that the Gita is sung. It's not spoken. Because you might think it's kind of odd. Arjuna is on the battlefield and he's in anxiety, and it's before war, and it's the great warrior has broken down. It's really intense. So you might think, like, this is not really the time to sing me a song, thanks. But somehow or other, it must have been appropriate. Somehow or other, the context of the Lord delivering it like that would have never been weird. It must have been perfect and appropriate. So it's very interesting just to meditate on that, how the culture was and what the dynamic was, where the Lord is just sweetly kind of singing what he's saying to Arjuna in a song. So it shows you how far away we are, actually, from the real culture. Because it's hard to imagine that wouldn't be strange, that he's singing it. But it was, we have to accept that it was quite appropriate. Anyway, so just some, periodically you read a verse, it really strikes you as being very beautiful. I was speaking to Radhika Raman. Does anyone know the devotee Radhika Raman? He's got his PhD from Oxford University in Sanskrit at Jiva Goswami's Satsandarbha, and now she's a chair of religion in a University of Utah, a tenured professor, even though he's in his 20s. He's a real, his talks are on YouTube. I highly recommend watching them, or on a ISKCON Desire Tree. He's just brilliant. It's like you're listening to an acharya when he speaks. His comprehension of the literature and his fidelity to Prabhupada and ISKCON is such a nice combination. And so he was saying in one talk that he had many mentors for his PhD in Sanskrit, and he was saying he met one really famous Sanskrit scholar who wasn't a Vaishnava, but he's very famous in the world of knowing Sanskrit. And he was telling Ravi that the Sanskrit of the Bhagavatam is unparalleled in its beauty. Of all the Sanskrit that he's ever studied, that exists, he says the Bhagavatam's Sanskrit is just beyond compare. Its beauty is legendary. He was just telling him that as like a scholarly fact, just an observation. So the word for word today, Veda means knows, Avinashinam is indestructible, Nityam always existing, Ya one who, Enam this soul, Ajam unborn, Avyayam immutable, Katam how, Sa that, Purusha person, Parta O Parta, Kam whom, Gatayati causes to hurt, Hanti kills, Kam whom. And the verse is, O Partha, how can a person who knows that the soul is indestructible, eternal, unborn, and immutable kill anyone or cause anyone to kill? Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Everything has its proper utility. And a man who is situated in complete knowledge knows how and where to apply a thing for its proper utility. Similarly, violence also has its utility, and how to apply violence rests with the person in knowledge. Although the justice of the peace awards capital punishment to a person condemned for murder, the justice of the peace cannot be blamed because he orders violence to another person according to the codes of justice. In Manu Samhita, the law book for mankind, it is supported that a murderer should be condemned to death so that in his next life he will not have to suffer for the great sin he has committed. Therefore, the king's punishment of hanging a murderer is actually beneficial. Similarly, when Krishna orders fighting, it must be concluded that violence is for supreme justice, and thus Arjuna should follow the instruction, knowing well that such violence, committed in the act of fighting for Krishna, is not violence at all, because, at any rate, the man, or rather the soul, cannot be killed. So for the administration of justice, so-called violence is permitted. A surgical operation is not meant to kill the patient, but to cure him. Therefore, the fighting to be executed by Arjuna at the instruction of Krishna is with full knowledge, so there is no possibility of sinful reaction. Om Ajnanatimrandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Gena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. So the Gita is so wonderful. It is not a normal book like we're used to reading when we're growing up. It's actually conscious. It's non-different from the Lord. And the Lord is in every verse. And in each verse we can speak unlimitedly. We can talk for the rest of our lives. And when we investigate and we meditate and we study, then we can plumb more and more profound truths from the verses as we take a look at them. Because once again, in the same way we understand that Krishna is speaking these verses, so they must be the penultimate Sanskrit poetry. So similarly, these shlokas must be so pithy and full of significance, and beyond that, they're actually conscious. They're non-different from the Lord. We all have this experience, I'm sure, that we have interesting experiences with the books, where in a time of need, then we open the book, and the book speaks to us. We find something particularly relevant, or I'm sure we all experience, particularly with the Bhagavatam, because it's so lengthy, that we come across something that we don't recall reading or phrased just like that. And it's so beautifully worded and such an amazing point, we become struck. Like, wow, this is wonderful. I don't remember ever reading this. It's like, I want to frame this verse. It's so powerful and it really speaks to me so deeply. You know, I'm sure we all have this experience where we're touched by something. So if we just can take a step back and look at this verse. So Krishna is saying, it's interesting, he's saying that how can a person who understands, who knows that the soul is indestructible, kill anyone, right? So Krishna's saying that it's quite subtle in this verse, actually. It's quite deep. Because Krishna's giving multiple arguments for why he shouldn't worry and be in anxiety, with many different approaches, talking about the eternality of the soul. So in this, he's saying to Arjuna that how can someone who understands that the soul is eternal kill? Right? But it's not in the sense of like, how could you do that? You know? You ate the last glubjamin. How could you do that? So he's not saying it like that how could you kill? Or how could someone kill who is of great character? You see? That's not the question. The killing is happening. But Krishna is saying that, but you're not, if you understand what's really going on, then how could you even think that you're killing, right? He's saying that by knowing it, then you're not really killing. How can you kill if you understand that the soul is eternal? So he's explaining to Arjuna that it's not that it's okay to kill, or that he's sanctioning the killing, which he also does in other verses, but in this verse, he's basically saying, you're actually not killing. If you actually understand, killing is not happening. And then, so when he says that, he's referring to Arjuna, right? And then the verse concludes, Krishna says, or anyone who knows, how can they cause anyone to kill? So who might Krishna be speaking of there? Saying that one cannot cause another person to kill if one is in knowledge. That's right. Himself, Krishna. So he's including himself. He's saying that because there's the killing, and then there's the fact that Krishna is telling him to kill. So Krishna is addressing the morality of him preaching to Arjuna to kill, not simply Arjuna's killing. He's also involving himself. He's defending his own actions. And it's very interesting that the Bhagavad Gita, if you just give a synopsis to someone that, yeah, it's a book where God's telling someone that it's okay to kill. It sounds like a little strange. It's hard to explain, you know. Right off the bat, people may go, well, that doesn't sound very spiritual. That doesn't, you know, that sounds kind of fanatical, excessive. But it had to be that way. It actually had to be. Because you know that if the Bhagavad Gita is basically the instruction manual, not just the instruction manual, but it's a hand that the Lord is giving all of us, the living entity, to get out. It's like a window of opportunity. Krishna is saying, this is okay. Yes, repeated birth and death, it's horrible, but I'm extending a hand to you. This is the way out. And I'm going to give you the knowledge and the process by which you can actually stop the cycle of birth and death and come back to me. So, in order to make that dramatic, the essence of it is, you know, the way that the Gita concludes, the context is Arjuna's concerned. So we have to see, if he's representing us, his concern is that, is this really going to work? Can I do this? Is this a good decision? Because in the material world, every decision is based on how you have an improved time in the material world. We don't have an experience. We've been very good, we've been very bad, but we've never left. There's a whole new action that we have no experience of, which is why Krishna consciousness can be kind of artificial sometimes and very difficult for us, because we have no context for it. We're used to improving our life, and we may adopt the process of Krishna consciousness to give us superior happiness. But it's not about that. It's like, see you later. You're gone. It's not that it's going to be really good. You're going to be so happy. People are going to appreciate you. And you're going to be finally transcend misery in this world. No, it's like, actually, you got to go. That's the answer. There is no good situation here. And at the end, Krishna says that, basically says to Arjuna, you got to trust me on this. You have to trust me. That's the conclusion. Of course, the Gita has many profound things. The Gita reveals to us, Krishna says very beautifully and very confidentially, he says that if you love me, if you develop love for me, if you love me like I love you, because he declares that he's the best friend of all the living entities, and he's the Father. He's declaring his love, and he's saying, and if you love me back, then I'll get you out of this place. I will give you the smarts. I'm in your heart, and I will guide you. I will take your hand and lead you through the dark night, the forest, out. But he says at the end, it's interesting. He's saying, but you have to trust me. You've got to trust me. I promise you You will not get a karmic reaction for trying to be my devotee, even though it may look like. Everyone may tell you, you're blowing it, You're doing it wrong. You shouldn't be so Krishna conscious, You're making a mistake. You're wasting your time. There's so many arguments against Krishna consciousness. And Krishna is saying, you've got to trust me. It's worth it. And if there is some sin, I will absorb it personally. You'll have nothing to worry about. So that's really the plea of the Gita, and that's Krishna's telling that to Arjuna. He's explaining everything logically, but at the end he's saying, look, just trust me. You have to hear me. If you do not hear me, you will be lost. So this is a critical element of this proposition. And Arjuna is tested unlike anyone was ever tested. You see how soft Yudhisthira Maharaj is, how destroyed he was by the killing of the battle. He basically never really got over it. So these are, major Maharati hardcore dudes. But still, the culture was that they actually didn't like to kill. They didn't enjoy it. They tried everything within their power. They were so tolerant of the insults against them. Bhima was a bit of a intense dude. But generally, the Pandavas were not really keen to kill. Generally, warriors are tough dudes. They want to manifest their power and lay it down and be a hero and show everyone who's boss, But they weren't. So this is very difficult. Arjuna was very tested. And you could argue that, if the Gita had been a story about God coming and telling someone to steal something, to rob a treasury somewhere, and it's okay, it's for devotional service, and I'm God, and if I give you permission, that's what's important. But if that was true, then people would say, yes, that might be, but killing? No. Killing is never right. Killing is never right in this world. God would never ask anybody to kill. That is not spiritual. So Krishna has to make the point. He picks the most wicked thing that we know. Murder is the most evil act that we know of. If somebody's a child molester, we think that's horrible, and they're evil, and we feel so badly. The child's life has been destroyed. But if someone is a killer, murders, then we're like, that is unacceptable. That is beyond the pale. So Krishna had to bring about the most externally sinful act and make the point that actually it can be okay. It can be okay. It can be spiritual. It can produce love of God. Murder, cutting someone's head off. Because Krishna, the point isn't the murder. That's not the point. The point is Krishna, if he says, if I say it's okay, if you hear me, and here we come back to this point, if you listen to me and you trust me and understand me as I am, and I say it's okay, then it's of a different nature than any action in this material world. You see? So it's the same thing, actually. That's that departing message of trust me. You won't be entangled if you do what I say. In fact, you'll get out of here. You'll become disentangled. So it's the same message. Krishna's telling Arjuna that you have to trust me, and my plan and my activities are transcendental and do not have the same effect or significance as any action in the material world. And it's also interesting because ultimately, spirituality is about death. From a position of gyan, from a philosophical point of view. I remember I was in high school. I was 16 and I was taking Latin. And in the beginning of the Latin textbook, there was a quote by a famous Roman orator called Cicero. And this quote was, "Philosophy is nothing else than a man's way of preparing for death. And somehow that really struck me. I can't tell you much from like other textbooks and things, but that really hit me. I was like, wow, that's heavy. But that's really it. That's ultimately what philosophy is we're mortal and we know the end is coming, and we're trying to figure it out. We're trying to make sense of it. So devotees are philosophers. We all have that in common. All of us have got Prabhupada's books and something struck us. We were suffering in the material world, wondering what's going on, or we might have had a sense of God. And we prayed, and then we got one of Prabhupada's books, and it was like, wow, this is it. Everything I've been looking for my whole life, someone actually has the answer. Prabhupada just lays it all down. It's like, here it is. This is the truth. And when you hear it, it's like you've heard it before. It's not like something new, like some great new idea some clever guy came up with. It's like something goes so deep, like, actually, I know this. I heard this before. This is like, it's like got substance. It's genuine. It's not just a really good idea, you know. So by killing the genesis or the springboard of the conversation, right? Then naturally we talk about death, as this shloka is talking about. And then Krishna can then get into it. Because ultimately, this is what separates us from the non-devotees, is that we have no fear of death. Death does not represent darkness, mystery, wonder, like nobody comes back, you know? No, everybody comes back from death. You do come back. It's just a lie. It's the place where no one returns from. No, everybody returns from death. For one who's died, birth is certain, and then it means you have to die again. So that's really the litmus test of our philosophical advancement, is how has it affected our experience of death? And this is really, we also for ourselves individually, we have to look at how well we're prepared to die. Is it going to be sad and painful and depressing and, you know, or will it be Krishna's mercy? This is the time ordained by the Lord. So I'm very excited because Krishna has looked after me up until this moment. He's not going to stop. I totally trust him that he's going to put me in a better situation. And what's ever good, what's ever important, I'll retain. The Lord will allow me to keep that. The only thing that will be lost is illusion, something mundane that I still might have a shred of. So then if that's the case, then death holds no fear for us. It's like waking up or going to sleep. It's no significance, no drama, no trauma. You know, right here in Prabhupada's rooms, when Prabhupada was on the planet, maybe 1975, 76. So there was a girl from Los Angeles, a young girl, maybe she was like 13 years old, and she had a terminal disease. So her mother, who was a devotee, I forget her name, disciple of Prabhupada, you know, they all decided that, you know, that this girl would come to Vrindavan to die because she was terminal. She had a few months to live. So I think it was, who was the Mataji Prabhu who was telling the story in Prabhupada Memories? I'll remember her name. So she was friends with the mother and she was explaining it was quite difficult. So they went in when they got here to see Prabhupada, and the mother, you know, Prabhupada met the young girl and the mother, and they talked, and Prabhupada kind of preached to them a bit and encouraged them and said, this is very good, you're in Vrindavan and this is the place to leave your body. And they left. But then the girl started to go down a bit. She kind of, you know, her condition worsened. And the mother of the girl became quite upset and asked to see Prabhupada again. So she went in to see Srila Prabhupada, and she was like, she kind of broke down a bit. It was like, Prabhupada, she's going to die. You know, she's going to, you know, just kind of like losing it a bit. And she went in with this other devotee lady, and this other devotee lady who was there said Prabhupada became very stern, quite stern, and said, Have you understood nothing I've taught you? Have you understood nothing of the philosophy? Like, we're like basically saying like, this is not appropriate. Like, don't you get it? This is illusion. She's not the body. She's in Vrindavan. You know, Prabhupada was not appreciating it. And he corrected her quite strongly. So that's the situation. Where we don't, there's affection. We're not monsters. We're not robots. We are soft, but we're not sentimental. Sentimentality is the enemy. Sentimentality is death. That's what makes you die, is when you're sentimental. But truth is liberating. And it's not a cause of bewilderment. It's not that death is not an emotional thing. We become sad when a devotee leaves. And in fact, a devotee may also experience some, but it's spiritual, because we're losing the association of the rare gem-like devotee. So that's appropriate. But bewilderment never takes place. We're not disturbed, like this is not supposed to have happened, Though we may even, a devotee may even, there was one devotee from Australia, and he wrote an offering. His Guru Maharaj, when Tamal Krishna Maharaj left the planet unexpectedly in a car accident, and he said that his wife was going to dress the deities. And he said, when you're dressing Krishna, if you want to stick him with one of those pins. I mean, of course, on one hand, that sounds totally demonic, right? But on another hand, it was like, I didn't judge him, It was like some kind of bhav, He just lost his guru. He's a wonderful devotee, gentle, kind, generous, has given so much money, collected millions of dollars. But there was that moment, he was like saying that. So that's also not bewilderment, that's spiritual, That's also spiritual. So, I mean, ultimately, if something is an impetus for spiritual happiness and inspiration, then that's the judge. That's the gauge of whether it's appropriate. So that's really the big test, is how we prepare for death and how we experience death of ourselves and others. How do we think when we meditate on that? Some of us are not spring chickens, It's like it's not that far away, and it might be sooner than you think, because strange things happen. So how do you feel about that? I had a friend who had a T-shirt that had the angel of death on it, and it said, it was like a word balloon, and he was saying, he's saying, catch you later. It's a little spooky, because he is going to catch you later. It's not just a bluff on a T-shirt. It's like, and it kind of like when you read it, you're like, yeah. So, Mr. Death can tap us on the shoulder tomorrow. So how would we respond? Are we ready? How would we embrace that? Would we think, I'm not ready, I'm not prepared, oh, this body has so much potential, like I never could do what I wanted to, so please, so many things. Remorse, regret, lamentation. Yeah, so because modern culture is immersed in illusion, there's this idea, there's this aversion to the death penalty, because they really don't believe in the soul and they don't understand the next life. So for them, it's to kill is the most horrible, that there is no possible, even if somebody's a mass murderer, they have no conception that that's actually a good thing, because they don't understand about the nature of the soul. So you see, the death penalty is in America becoming less and less popular, because people think even if it's a murderer, an evil person who's killed like multiple people, He'll go, yes, that's true, but no, don't kill them. That's horrible. Because it's sentimentality, it's attachment to the physical body. So it's a very bracing situation. Arjuna is having to sober up, and Krishna is explaining the truth. What's really happening? And you can extrapolate this on a personal level and just look at, how we exist, how we think on a daily basis as devotees. What is our mindset? Like, how attached are we? How detached are we? Because, that there were devotees on the other side. There was devotees on the other side. And they were killed by the Pandava side. So how complicated is that? It's not so cut and dry. We may think, yes, it's very clear. There's the bad guys and there's the good guys, but it wasn't like that in this war. It was very mixed up. All kinds of atrocities were done on both sides and mixed, administration of justice. When Ashwatthama killed the children of Draupadi, Krishna was like, kill him. Krishna wanted to kill him, and Draupadi didn't want to. And it's explained that the reason why, can anyone remember?
She didn't want the mother Ashwatthama to
Yes.
experience what she
Yes.
Probably just said that in the class this morning.
Yes. That's why I was throwing it out there. See who was listening to class this morning. Yes, Prabhupada was talking about the Draupadi, that it was her compassion for Ashwatthama's mother, not for him. Though there might have been that, there was that there, but ultimately it was compassion. So much was going on. So even within the world of devotees, we can't expect things to go normally. And we may find we have adversaries as devotees in our society. So how are we going to respond? You see, Krishna was advising Arjuna to cultivate detachment so he could execute his duty. And to understand, Krishna went to great lengths so that Arjuna wasn't acting with anger. He wanted Arjuna to act from a place of knowledge. Now, not to say that Arjuna was a kshatriya. He had some vim and vigor, to do the right thing and chastise those who did the wrong thing. But really, Arjuna's position was one of knowledge. It wasn't like he lost control and went on a mass murdering rampage. It was from a place of knowledge. So we also have to maintain that, because we are devotees, and we live with devotees, and we work with devotees, and we're married to devotees, and we are children of devotees and parents of devotees. And so basically, if we have conflict, it's going to be with the devotees. We are going to suffer at the hands of the devotees. We're going to experience our karma at the hands of devotees. So this is a great challenge. It's not that, okay, I'm going out, guys, I'm going out on a vacation. I'm getting all my bad karma. I'm going to Goa, and I'm going to be abused by a bunch of non-devotees, because devotees would never do anything to harm me, because devotees don't make mistakes. So every month, every year I take a break so I can get my sinful reaction from non-devotees. So no, because we're always with devotees. So we have to use the Gita for inspiration to understand that even if we're going to experience misery and challenge, but we have to respond from a philosophical position and not become disturbed. And this is the greatest challenge. This is the greatest challenge for devotees. Is that what will you do when you're mistreated by a devotee? Or an authority? Or your spiritual master is harsh? Or maybe does something that doesn't seem like it makes sense. Seems to like mimic like a non-spiritual behavior, right? So how will we respond? That's the real moment. That's where you can lose your spiritual life because, you know, if you talk to people who are no longer practicing devotional service, and I'm sure we all have met devotees who used to be fired up and now they're kind of not in devotional service. You know, people generally don't say, oh, you know, I just can't believe that God is blue and he has a flute and I'm the soul. And no, it's generally like, well, let me tell you, you know, I was on a Sankirtan marathon in the middle of winter and the Sankirtan leader didn't pick me up and then didn't let me buy some medicine and, you know, took my sleeping bag and I got really sick and nobody came and visited me at the hospital. And, you know, it's because they experience some kind of non-spiritual behavior from a Vaishnav. And that can be the most destructive thing. That can be the death knell of our spiritual lives. Because we think, what is this? This isn't right. This is bogus. Supposed to be a devotee. What a pretender. Maybe everybody's a pretender. Maybe the whole thing is pretense. So it can really, this can be a tremendous challenge. These moments. And this is, Arjuna was facing opposition from devotees. And he was thinking like, how can I kill Grandfather Bhishma? This just doesn't make sense. It goes against everything I think I understand. And Krishna was like, yeah, it's gnarly, isn't it? Well, let me just explain something to you. Let me listen to me now, and let me talk to you and tell you something. Please listen. And the stage was set. And somehow or other, Krishna had to give him so much background information to placate him and inspire him to rise and fight. That's what the whole Gita is. It's very complex. You have to understand the soul, karma, the modes of material nature, Krishna's divine position, his plan for the living entities, entanglement, liberation, natures of living entities. It's a pretty exhaustive conversation. He could have said, just do it, you know? We'll talk about it later. But Krishna took his time. He really, you know, for all of us. And that's our understanding, is that it was for us. Arjuna really didn't need to hear it. But we're all struck with confusion and anxiety. So we have to see the big picture. Burijan Prabhu once said that a technique that he uses is that when he's suffering distress as a devotee, that he takes a step back from it. He takes a step back from the incident, and then he looks at it from a distance. And then he understands, he says, this is actually my karma. And then he kind of deprograms himself from the charge of the incident through philosophy. So that's a really good practice, you know? And it's a great test because in the moment we respond, if somebody shoves you, immediately, it's like you don't even have to try. You immediately, your heartbeat quickens, the adrenaline pumps, and you want to push the person back. You know? Anger is just so powerful. It happens, we don't even have to try. It's second nature. So when someone disturbs us or we get something happens to us, bad situation, distress, we have to go internally and we have to ask, my Lord, you know, what is it, you know, is there something for me to learn from this? Is that why this is happening? Please show me. And that's, you know, that the suffering that Arjuna had to go through was not just bad karma. The Lord arranged it. Krishna arranged Arjuna's perplexity and his unhappiness. He was crying. He dropped his bow and was crying. This is pretty serious. This is like very masculine, heroic, you know, chivalrous, macho hero who in full control of his senses, and he's crying. He's very full of pathos. On the chariot, tears, confusion, bewilderment. Read the Mahabharata and understand who Arjuna was. He was Mr. Large and in charge, you know, like fighting Shiva to a standstill. his accumulation of weapons and the Deva is engaging him in defeating enemies that they could not win against. He was the greatest warrior ever in the history of warriors. Arjuna's prowess is unparalleled. And his conduct and his chivalry and his sobriety, controlled the sleeping urge. We all know that that's the hardest, right? So this is who we're talking about, like broken down sobbing. But Krishna arranged this. So Arjuna could do the ultimate service by allowing the Gita to be explained to us. So Arjuna is explaining the Gita. He's the one who accepted the austerity. And Krishna is saying that anyone who explains this to the devotees, then no one is more dear to me, and nor shall anyone in the future be. So Arjuna, he received the great reward for that. So all of us in our own devotional life, when we have these moments where it's opposition and it seems completely, we can't figure it out, it doesn't seem fair. You see, if you can figure it out, if it makes sense, then you don't really make a lot of spiritual advancement. It's those moments where stuff happens to us and it doesn't make sense. It's not fair. And it gets to us. That's Krishna. We're not as smart as he is. We might be very aloof and transcendental and float as we meditate. We close our room in the ashram. We do a padmasana and float off the ground because of our great prowess. But no, we get stuck. It happens to all of us. Something sticks in our gut where it's like, not cool. It could be something small that sets us off or something major. Somebody moves my bucket from the row of buckets under the hot water geyser in the ashram. It's going to make you want to beat someone. Or it can be something like you don't know what to do in your life. Everybody's abandoned you, or you're just completely bewildered. You don't know what your service should be, or you're having some conflict. So in these moments, these are the times where we have to take the wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita as it is. And remember that Arjuna had it rough too. It was really bad. And, he was able to push through. Krishna helped him. And it ended wonderfully. He was a hero. We're so indebted to Arjuna, And, if you think about it, his son was Abhimanyu, the great teenage hero, the wonderful Abhimanyu. And the grandson of Arjuna is, of course, Parikshit Maharaj, who was the reason why Bhagavatam was spoken. His grandson, Srimad Bhagavatam, was spoken to. So how much indebted we are to Arjuna in our line as Gaudiyas. We have very special connection with Sri Arjuna. So we can pray to him for help and strength. Actually, Anutama Prabhu, who is the minister, international GBC minister for communications. His office is in Washington, D.C., where I was some years, about 4 years ago, and he has his office there. And he's the communications minister for ISKCON. So years ago, when there was some, in California, there were some judgments trying to get the devotees out of the airport distributing books. And he was asked to be on the Larry King show. Now, the Larry King show now I don't know, he's retired, or I don't know if it still goes on, but that was like the biggest show in the United States. Larry King was it. Bigger than Johnny Carson or, anything. Everyone watched Larry King. And this was the first time a devotee had ever been on this TV show. They're having a guy in charge of the airports and Anutama to represent ISKCON. And I was in a seminar in Australia on communications, and Anutama said he was so nervous, like he was on national television representing the movement. And he said that what he did was, he just was meditating that Arjuna, he had the Bhagavad Gita in front of him, and he was meditating that Arjuna was standing behind him. Like the whole time, that was like his fixed meditation. And he showed us the footage, the clip, and he did okay, you know? So I always thought that was kind of far out, you know? You can invoke someone, you know, the presence of someone, a great devotee, you know, bring them, call them. So, yeah, all of us, when we get those insurmountable challenges that just cause a distraction and hopelessness, and we wonder, what are we doing? What's going to happen to me? Then we have to understand that the Lord is orchestrating it. So if that's true, we know that the Lord is not a sadist, you know? It's not, you know, in King Lear, William Shakespeare's King Lear, there's a line of one of the characters who's exasperated, and he says, "We are to the gods like flies to wanton boys. They kill us for their sport." This was King Lear saying this. We are to the gods like flies to wanton boys, meaning naughty boys. We're like how little boys will torture, pull the wings off flies. So he's saying that's how we are to the gods. That's what the gods do to us in this world. Of course, King Lear was a tragic figure. He made a lot of mistakes, and he was not, the beacon of wisdom. You know who was? Was the fool in King Lear. Was the only one who actually had a brain and understood everything. And the fool's dialogue is all the wisdom in that play. He's the one who sees everything. He overindulges Goneril and Regan as two princess daughters. Anyway, it's a very interesting play. But there's a statement where he expresses like this. And we're also guilty of this. We all can be guilty of this. We won't talk about it. We may not give it a voice. But when things go bad, we kind of know who's behind it. And a little voice may say, "Why are you doing this to me? Look at me. You know, haven't I done enough for you? Like, what did I do to deserve this? Like, come on. I don't ask for much. I've given up so much for you in Vrindavan and India and so much austerity. Like, how could you do what? That was like my last gumsha. It just blew away in the wind. And I have nothing. And now I have to get to my room. Like, walk along wherever I'm visible to like everyone in the whole Gurukul and everything. Whatever it is. It didn't actually happen. I'm just making it up. So that is, that's where we have to practice being theists and devotees, is when things get hard. Because you see, the non-devotee, we all know that basically at the end of the day, they blame God. They're God's competitor. And they don't think they're responsible for the breakdown of their relationship with God. If you take the average person, I've talked to friends, I've talked to so many people, and basically it's like, well, I'm a good person and I do good. And I guess if I am here, God's in control, and if he wants me to know him, he'll take the initiative. You know? So I'm going to wait, and I'm just going to do my thing, and I'm going to do what my senses impel me to do, because God gave me those senses. So if it feels good, then how could it be wrong? So that's everyone's philosophy. It's kind of putting the onus on God. And that's why they're in ignorance. They don't go anywhere. But then Prabhupada comes along, and you get one of his books, and he says, hey, you know what? You're responsible with the breakdown of your relationship with God. You left. You wanted to leave him. He begged you not to go. And you are trying to compete with him. It's like, whoa, no one's ever told me that. You mean it's my responsibility? And then we may think, okay, all right, I accept it. How could it be anything else? How could God really be responsible? And then there's so much power in that when we accept responsibility in the relationship. That's the abyss that we leap across, is we make that change. is when we accept responsibility for our problem and we don't blame Krishna. And even in the material world, this happens, you know. I've given this example before, but it's a good one. That we may have had an experience where we have a breakdown with a relationship with a friend, and maybe we don't talk to them for some time. And then we may get inspired, and we call them up and we say, hey, listen, I'm really sorry. What I said to you, it really wasn't coming from the right place. I'm sorry. I was wrong. And that's so powerful. And you know, like, I don't know if you've experienced many times when you do that, what is the response? The friend says, actually, man, no, I blew it. No, you're not, it wasn't all you. Actually, I was kind of lame too. And you're like, oh, and it's like you resolve it, you know, and you're both kind of apologizing. But it would have never happened, probably, if you didn't take the initiative to be the bigger person. So it's a mundane example, just giving the you know, because it's not that if we accept responsibility, we're the bigger person than Krishna. But the example of that, it's a very powerful proposition, accepting self-responsibility. Even in the material world, it does miracles, changes people's hearts. So God also becomes softened when we say to him, my Lord, I've left you so long ago and I've been ignoring you for so many births, and turning my back on you and trying to enjoy your resources and exploiting your souls meant for your enjoyment. And I've tried to take control and use them for my pleasure. And then Krishna, the great Lord Swayam Bhagawan Krishna, turns when he hears us speak like that. Because that's really what Hare Krishna is. That's what chanting Hare Krishna is. It's a tome, it's like reparation. We're saying, oh, please let me back. Because when you ask to come back, that means you're remorseful for what you did, that you left. It's included in that when you're asking to be returned. So when we chant Hare Krishna, that's why it's such a powerful prayer, that we're saying to Krishna, okay, please give me a chance. I'm not mad at you. I'm not cursing you and blaming you and just sitting on my backside waiting for you to come. Please give me a chance. I'm actively asking for service to be reinstated, to make it up to you. Give me a chance. So it's quite a powerful proposition. But we have to always refresh ourselves. You know, we can join ISKCON and then we can become cultural devotees, where we lose that fire and introspection and intensity. And then it's just the society. And then it's friendship, love, prasadam, you know, all the things that are pleasing. But we lose that. But then we get tested and then we think, what happened? What happened to those days? Where's the joy? Where's the nectar? Where's my taste? You know? Because we have to maintain that edge. We have to maintain that edge. And when things happen, bad things happen, that's a great opportunity to kind of go deeply and, you know, say, okay, I know Krishna isn't just doing this because he's mean. He must have something he wants me to understand. So please pray. And this is a great meditation in Vrindavan, because there's great souls who have spent a lot more time than me in Vrindavan. But my limited realization is that Krishna grooms you here, Radharani and Krishna in Vrindavan. You come home and they're like, great, all right, let's do this. You're back, like, let's bring you back. Like, here you are, okay, what's going on? What's standing between you and me? And they bring it out. And if you don't see that, then you can think, oh my God, it's such a heavy place, you know, like, oh, it's like, but that's what's really happening, is that the Lord and his consort, you know, mom and dad, you know, they're actually going in and bringing out what they can see that is preventing us from being permanent residents here at Vrindavan. We have to see that. True or not true? Do you accept this point? Anyone want to argue it? It's all right. You can. I'm always open to be corrected. But that's my insight. Is that they're so desirous. They're so happy that we've come back. You know, Prabhupada says that Vrindavan is a place where Krishna's devotees are naturally inclined to love the Lord, and the Lord is naturally inclined to love his devotees. So what the love means, he sees the darkness, the poison, the black in the heart. And he's like, this is not you, Let's just do this. Let's get rid of this. And let me make something happen in your life to illustrate the anartha. That's your thing. Because we're all different. We all have our thing. And then it's like calamity. And it can be quite intense, but we have to go deeply and think, okay, pray, please show me. I'm ready. So introspection and sobriety, detachment, these are all very good friends. And this is what the Gita is teaching. Krishna is promising nectar forever, love and happiness, and fulfill all of our dreams, live happily ever after. All the lies of the material world, all the lies of the storybooks and films and everything. Only the Gita delivers happily ever after, forever. Eternal love. Riding off in the sunset, the spiritual sunset of Gaudadesh. So we have to become serious, especially when we have challenges. And we have to check and see. Death is there, and it's coming. And we want to do it right. We want to understand, as Krishna is explaining death, in that same consciousness, how Krishna is saying it's not a problem, it's actually an illusion. Like, this is how I see it. And you should see it too, like this. Please don't misunderstand death. The wise lament neither for the living nor the dead. And Prabhupada, here in these rooms, also with that devotee, said, please don't misunderstand. Don't be illusioned. Please hear what I've taught you. Please understand everything that I've been teaching you. To not misunderstand. So that's the gift we strive for, is to have that kind of sobriety and detachment, where we will also meet death like Krishna sees it, as nothing, trifling. So would anyone like to ask a question? Make a comment? Prabhuji?
One of the first points you made.
I'm going to repeat your question periodically for our listeners at home. Oh, do we? Yes. Okay, great. I got in so much trouble from Mother Parvati last class.
Thank you for the wonderful class, first of all. I was just thinking when you said, when Krishna was singing the Gita to Arjuna, it was after everybody had assembled on the battlefield, and the Pandavas and Krishna blew their conch shells and crushed shattered the hearts of the Kauravas. So I was just thinking how amazing that whole scene was. That here's these huge armies there. They blew their conch shells. Bhishma blew his, and then fired them up, and then the transcendental conch shells all blew, and it completely shattered the hearts of everybody else on the other side. And then here's Krishna singing this beautiful thing to Arjuna. And everybody was watching. So I think, I'm just speculating, but because when there's this beautiful verse, Tataiva Chandena Loka Vira Ya Hare Krishna Mukaravinda. I forget the rest of the third verse, but anyway, it's describing that when Krishna was on the battlefield coming towards the warriors, they would see Krishna, Mukaravinda, the beautiful face of Krishna. They would, Nayana Viraman, with their own eyes, they would think that, oh, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. It's the most beautiful. And then Paradashta Putra Padamaparasya, and Arjuna would shoot the arrows at him and kill him. So Prabhupada explains in the purport that when they appreciated Krishna's beautiful face, it awakened their love for Krishna. And then when Arjuna shot them, it purified them more so they could actually enter Vaikuntha. So I was thinking maybe it was all just part of that amazing situation there where there's, and he's singing this to Arjuna, and the universal form is there. So it's an amazing pastime, isn't it? The whole battle, so amazing.
Krishna is so enchanting, right? Like, how enchanting would Krishna have to be so that if he sings something to you, it doesn't seem weird, right? Like, if you think about that, like how enchanting and kind of magically beautiful, with this amazing hair and peacock feather and eyes and his gait, his gestures, his movements, and he's singing, and it's like, yeah, that's Krishna. Yeah, that's like how he communicates. He's so attractive. But that's a beautiful point. Yeah, when we think of war, it's such an ugly, dirty, but it wasn't like that. Even the bad guys were like good guys in a sense, that they had some character. They had chivalry and bravery, and and they could like appreciate the beauty of a chariot driver coming to kill, being, driving their killer, but they're like relishing that moment of it's so beautiful because that's their consciousness. There's no fear or anxiety or, it's like such a nice consciousness. There's so many, Mahabharata is so wonderful. It's, when Yudhisthira comes to Kripa and Drona, and they're wondering what are they doing before the battle, and they come and the warriors are standing, all the great Maharathis, and Yudhisthira comes and he circumambulates 3 times Kripa and Drona and offers obeisances. And they're like, yes, my child, what is it that you want? And he said, I've come to beg something. And they're like, yes. And they said, I'm coming to beg to allow me to defeat you in battle. And they both smile. It's just, and they smile and look at each other and they say, actually, if you had not come and done this, if you had not come and asked our permission, you would have never won this battle. But because you've done this, then yes, we give you this. We grant you that you can defeat us. It's like how, and all the warriors are like in tears, at that moment, so moved, This is so wonderful. Mahabharata is just so ecstatic. And it's just the culture, the God-conscious culture, where everyone embraces their roles and does it with dignity, and knowledge and civility. It's like for some time, Hridayananda Maharaj was reading Jane Austen. I don't know if you've read Jane Austen. It's really nice, actually. And he was saying everyone in ISKCON should read these books because there's just a way that people relate. There's a dignity. There's a decency, a respect, an intelligence, So that's what's missing in modern culture. It's just ghost culture, Bhuta culture, or worse. But yeah, Mahabharata is so nice. Everyone was liberated because their consciousness was really good. I mean, imagine you're going to war on the wrong side, against the Pandavas. You go back to Godhead because your consciousness is good. Yeah, it's good situation. And don't get me started on Mahabharata story. I had to control myself when we were talking about Abhimanyu, because that's just from start to end. That is just awesome. Just from how he rides, it's described that he rides, Yudhisthira is looking, Arjuna is gone, and the 16-year-old Abhimanyu with his blue banner and sword, it says he was like a god amongst men, rolling up on his chariot, with his blue sword. That Krishna, his uncle, personally taught him sword fighting. And he's like, send me into the breach. I know how to penetrate the Chaturvyuha form. And it's like, that's the beginning. It's just like away we go. And it's just like, up until his heroic, the death of Abhimanyu, that's just so amazing. It's just like, if you think in the same way that when Krishna speaks poetic Sanskrit, then it must be the best. So Mahabharata, you want intrigue and adventure and romance and chivalry, and it must be the best, and it is. It's so good. Yeah, the Mahabharata also, the more you go into it, then the more. There's so many amazing things in it. Anyone else? Prabhu?
Another point you're making about consulting when something happens. Had some situation happen where a couple of devotees were giving me some grief. And I thought, like you were saying, so I have a friend who used to do my astrology chart, and I called him and I said, hey, tell me what's going on right now. And he said, well, there's a couple of people that are giving you a hard time and it's your karma. And I was like, oh, cool. I knew that, but I wanted to hear it as a confirmation so that I could just drop them as being the cause and not become angry with them. So yeah, it's really difficult, but it's necessary to try to figure that, somehow or other figure that out, because we're, like you're saying, we're living with devotees, and it's all going to come through them.
Yeah, there's no balm like transcendental knowledge. BALM, not BOMB, though it is the balm also. But and you can see, once again, referring to the Mahabharata, that there's multiple times where everyone will be bewildered. No one will actually understand what is the right. They can't figure it out. Because Dharma is very difficult to figure out. Like Draupadi being engaged to 5 husbands. If anyone accuses Vedic culture of being too sexist or patriarchal, I promise you, you won't find another religious scripture where one of the main scriptures that the main princess in the story has 5 husbands. You might find in other cultures, like a king who has many wives. But Vedic culture turns everything on its head, even though there is gender role. But it doesn't conform. The fact that that's glorified, and these are the 5 like the most handsome, the strongest, the smartest, the bravest, the most spiritual. Like she didn't just it's like 5 of the most amazing guys. She's the only wife and sharing them all. So that runs counter to what we normally accept, but that's Vedic culture. It's don't think you know it. Don't think something's okay. It's going to turn it on its head. So no one could understand it. No one could say, there's no precedence for this. A woman having 5 different husbands. This doesn't happen. And the king, Drupad, was bewildered. But then what happens is periodically in the Mahabharata, when no one knows what's right, when they're at the point of madness, then what happens always is Vyasadeva shows up. And he gives them transcendental knowledge, many times from a previous life, or knowledge which is not common, transcendental. And then he explained how Draupadi had petitioned Shiva 5 times. And so then when people thought, oh, there's a cause, oh, it's not just wanton, some weird thing that we're speculating. This is destiny. Shiva's involved. He's orchestrated this. That is okay. We can do that. So that's what the beauty of transcendental knowledge is. We can be so disturbed. I mean, a situation that makes no sense. We don't see a way out. But then transcendental knowledge will show, actually, it all makes sense. There is an answer. It's meant to be. There's a reason this is happening to you. It's actually all ordained by the Lord. So that's very wonderful. Who else has that? Who has that kind of reassurance, that comfort? It's just amazing. It's like being pacified like that. So yeah, I'm totally on board. Sometimes just knowing that something is destiny, like an astrologer said, oh, this is happening because you did this. It's like, okay, all right, then I can wear it. But when things happen spontaneously without a cause, it seems like a devotee's just having a go at us because they got on the wrong side of the bed. Then those are the times we have to kind of go inside and go, no, there's a reason. Even though it just seems like I just went through a bunch of tests and I thought I was going to have a break for a moment. This is also meant to be, and just suck it up, boy.
So what about when we blow it and overreact because our nature, my particular nature is such a way that I can get angry. I just had one of those happen. And here, when I first got here, it happened.
Thank you for your honesty, Prabhu.
And so what to do after the fact?
brother, you're going to blow it. We're all going to blow it. It happens. Because if we didn't, it would mean we have no issue. We're clear, and we're not. So yeah, but that, mistake is the pillar of a success. I mean, how many times I walk away from an exchange with a devotee and I'll be like, what did you're an idiot. That did not go the way you wanted it. How many times are you going to do that? But then, little by little, you have a victory. Something happens, where you're pleased. You kept it in control. And you know when you've done it. You know when you've won. You know when you've had a personal victory, where you go, wow, that's not normally me. That was good. You kept it together, man. Then it's very satisfying. You think, wow, actually this process works. I'm turning into a human. It's very encouraging. So yeah, but I'm sure that afterwards you're reflecting, that wasn't cool. I didn't need to do that. And then you become more conscious next time. And like I say, for me, Krishna consciousness is 2 steps forward, 1 step back. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. 2 steps forward, maybe sometimes 2 steps back. But yeah, that's the process in my experience. You learn from blowing it. You learn by blowing it. Because nothing brings something to your attention like failure and misery and conflict. It's Krishna could have designed the body that if something was going wrong and it was being injured, maybe it would make a sound or, but no, pain. It's very immediate. So it's our spiritual evolution is also like that. Pain is the focus, the engager. It's what gets our attention. And then we reflect. That wasn't nice, that wasn't fun. I'm not proud of the way I conducted myself. That was dumb. And then you think okay, well then what was the correct way? Well, actually, Abhaya, if you think about it, that was when you became upset and you didn't realize, if you actually reflect on it, this was your due. You created it. It's really inappropriate for you to get angry. And then you're like, yeah, you're right. But the challenge is, and we talked about it, the hard part of Krishna consciousness is that when you pass a test, when you have a victory, you don't rest on your laurels. What that does is it qualifies you for another test that's even more intense. So that can drive you kind of crazy, because in the material world, you win and at some point you retire, you relax. It's I'm so awesome. I just won the Nobel Prize for Literature, right? It's check me out, I'm just brilliant. And then you can ride for the rest of your life on something like that, an achievement like that. We'd like to introduce Abhaya Das. He's a Nobel laureate. He received the Nobel Prize for Literature. It's yeah, hey. It's that's enough till you die. Or you're an astronaut, or you won the gold medal, or there's many achievements in the material world, or even just having a successful business, you retire and you kind of what is called rest on your laurels, But in Krishna consciousness, it's a totally different dynamics, because we don't stop here. It's not about succeeding in the material. We have to get out. So it's you have to keep running. It's if the house is on fire and you go up a couple of flights of stairs, really keeping your head down, avoiding the smoke, and then you go up a couple and you're like, wow, I'm really good at getting out of houses. I'm just going to sit down for a while. Think about that. It's not a good idea, because you'll be burnt alive, So that can be a great challenge. You pass a test and Krishna's that's awesome. So I'm so impressed with how you dealt with that. I'm going to give you a really gnarly one now. That if you can pass this one, it's really going to make a difference in your spiritual life and your sadhana. And you if you pass that, Krishna's well, wow, that's amazing. Well, now that we're getting things done, let's just keep going. We're on a streak here. He's not Yeah, that was great. You did really well, kiddo. You know, we'll get back to you later. Krishna is not like that because he's a friend. He's like, this is good. Let's do this. So it can be exhausting. And we can arrange our life in a way where it reduces those things. But then life becomes kind of monotonous. Because if we look at our spiritual lives, and this is probably the most terrifying thing that you could think about. For me, all my most ecstatic times in Krishna consciousness, those moments where Krishna pulls the curtains open and you really get major reciprocation, Krishna gives you something. There have been times in my life where I performed the greatest surrender, where I just went above and beyond what was reasonable, really pushed myself. So that's kind of frightening, that's the price. It was times where it was like, I never even thought I was capable of that kind of surrender. I amazed myself. It was so out of character, how I pushed myself. And it's that's the price. Yeah, it's Krishna consciousness is intense, and it just doesn't stop.
On that understanding, so what Krishna is giving Arjuna is transcendental intelligence, how to deal with everything spiritually. That's what the Gita is for us, right? Krishna's giving the spiritual intelligence. So what is the process of increasing our spiritual intelligence to when those things happen, we'll have the proper intelligence to react properly? And how can we prepare ourselves, in other words, how to arm ourselves in such a way that when those tests do come, that we're better prepared with more spiritual intelligence?
Well, I don't know so much, but I would say that Krishna tells Arjuna that I'm telling you these things and you can understand them because you're my friend. That I'm telling you these things today because you're never envious of me. And you're my friend that I'm telling you these things today. Krishna tells Arjuna. So we have to always be the friend of the Lord. We have to keep that posture of friendship to Krishna when those challenges come, when those tests come. Not project on him our stuff or our karma or trauma or misconceptions. But if we can maintain that friendly attitude, that Krishna, you're wonderful. I don't exactly know why this is happening, but I know you love me. And I'm going to really try to work through this and go deep and see why I require this level of intensity. So that's the short answer, is just never lose that friendly mood towards the Lord of gratitude and appreciation. And, we all know Krishna's wonderful. He's all saved us. It's not so hard to draw upon that. So Krishna says that was Arjuna's qualification. He said, because you're my friend. It's pretty simple. So we're 5 minutes past. We'll wind it up. Thank you very much for kindly